All right, Rajesh, we're rolling. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for saying yes to come on the Thinking Project. And I really appreciate your time.
It's my pleasure, Dalton. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely. So now, from what I understand, you're a former Goldman Sachs. You're in that company, and then you have since founded and are currently the partner at True Green Capital. And
Yes, I'm a
as
shareholder there. Yes.
okay, perfect. Okay. Well, and I'm curious to know just more about that. So, yeah, I know that we met through Ben, and he and you guys told me a little bit about True Green Capital, but I'm curious in your own words, what you do there and what True Green Capital is all about.
So I I'm a shareholder there, which is a member
Mm,
there. I founded it along with one other colleague who still works there and is a partner, is an operating partner. And primarily, it's a private equity fund that owns a boatload of solar farms across the United States. And so early in 2010, 2011, we came up with the business model on how it would work. Solar was quite new in the United States then. And since then, it's becoming more and more cost effective to install solar in the United States and more at par with the generating electricity from fossil fuels and other traditional types of electricity generating uh, mechanisms. So that's what True Green does. It's laser focused on solar, and they own farms, solar farms in 14 states. Maybe it's a little bit more now,
hmm
and it's a great team running the projects. And solar is going to become one of the most predominant sources to generate electricity here in the coming years. So while it was very new in 2010 and 11 when we started, now it's basically getting into the mainstream in many various ways.
Yeah, I see a lot of like solar farms, like in Utah. I see a lot of solar farms. I mean, obviously, like selling solar and putting it on homes is a big deal. But I've seen a lot of pushback though, like putting solar like panels on homes. Like I was talking with a colleague of mine, and they were doing it a lot in Hawaii, which would be like a pretty prime place when it's not raining in Hawaii to put solar panels there. But they were getting a lot of pushback from the local electricity companies there. So I'm curious just to maybe hear your 2 cents on how this is going to evolve and what might need to happen in that kind of with those kind of dynamics for solar to be more accessible to the consumer.
So what happens is in the solar world, it's always a matter of jurisdiction and timing.
Okay.
As you probably hear, the mandates. Okay, by 2030, XYZ amount of electricity, 30% needs to come from renewable sources. In the year 2050, we want to be net zero. So the mandates always come from the government, and then different states in the United States they implement those differently. Like for
Mhm.
example, I can tell you New Jersey implements a program where they basically you've got to buy for every utility that produces carbon uh, to sell electricity to New Jersey residents or businesses, they've got to buy an equal number of or a set number of carbon credits, which are called like renewable energy certificates, to offset the carbon footprint that they're creating. So every state has their own program, and then based on that, they give incentives. And because solar has a pretty long shelf life now, projects they have no moving parts. They can keep generating electricity for almost 30, 40 years now. So
Oh wow.
from an investment point of view, it becomes pretty lucrative, or at least decently lucrative for investors to come in and have a very steady income over income streams over those periods of time.
Oh wow. Yeah, that's amazing. And I mean solar is I mean that like you said is really just going to be a really important part of the future as we start to come into like our own trying to find ways to have renewable energy and things like that. And I think it's a great way to do it. I've seen a lot of really cool uses for solar, and it's just, I mean, the more innovation that comes, the better it's going to be. But I'm curious for you, Rajesh, how did you start True Green Capital? How did you come into the solar space? Tell us that story.
That story is very interesting. I was in 2008. I was running a company which eventually got sold, and I happened to visit Spain. And the countries of Germany and Spain were at that time the leading solar providers almost on the planet. And I happened to come across somebody who basically, somebody I knew who owned a few solar farms, and I got to see actually the financials and the economics of how it worked there,
Mhm.
and pretty much brought that over here and said this is an area of the future, and met up with one of my buddies who's basically is one of the operating partners of True Green today, and we basically decided to do this uh, and do this in the United States. It was different. It was slightly different from what was happening from the business model that was in Spain or in Germany, but it was a workable model. And then since then it's evolved. We've got a fantastic team there that's been driving this. I don't have any day-to-day or operational duties in the company. I'm just a
Mhm.
shareholder, as I mentioned to you. But
Yeah.
the team there has done a phenomenal job building more and more and more.
But True Green Capital, you're a shareholder there now. But True Green Capital, when you started it, has since evolved. Like when you first founded it, I guess. What was that process like? How did I mean, I know you were kind of taking ideas and bringing them over, but I'm just curious to see how you. I mean, maybe got the buy-in necessary. Was it difficult for you to start? Were people questioning whether solar was going to be in the future or not?
Yeah, there were two aspects of it. I mean, solar is a company that you can't really do it out of a garage. It's very, very capital intensive, right?
Yeah.
So basically, once we started it, we did spend a few months sitting in an office in Manhattan, figuring out the business plan and getting all the docs done for a capital raise. And then over the next, and those were pretty difficult times post 2008 and 9 when we'd just gone through the crash, the financial crash on Wall Street.
Mhm.
But we found some good partners who became partners in the firm, and collectively we went out and raised money. We're able to raise money based on expertise we demonstrated and based on relationships we had, and then we built on that.
Okay. Yeah, wow, that's awesome. And I yeah, I can only imagine like talking about a solar idea right after, the 2008, 2009 stuff going on. I bet that was pretty insane. And so that is kind of the how it starts with triggering capital. But another thing you mentioned, but when we spoke before this podcast was kind of disrupting the education space. So what are you doing in like that innovative education space? Because to kind of give you just what I think of that is it. I got both of my, I got my bachelor's degree online, totally online. I'm pursuing an MBA, and that'll be 100% online and kind of like an accelerated program, which I think is already like when I got my bachelor's degree, online education was like still pretty new, and only a few colleges were doing it if they had online classes at all. But certainly the college that I went to was one of the only ones that had of like full 4-year program that you could do online. So I thought that that was pretty cool. And then you're kind of seeing this stuff, and of course we're in right now what has been coined the Great Resignation, and you have a lot of people wanting bachelor's and master's degrees and tons of experience for entry level jobs, and we're still fighting like this credential stuff. So I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on like education, where that's going, what's going on right now.
Sure, absolutely. So yes, so that is my daytime job, and I do basically like to build companies and post one side. taken a backseat at True Green Capital. I did start a data analytics company, which we sold in 2019, in November 2019. And then basically driving my daughter down to Philadelphia one day in November of 2019, she basically says, Dad, uh, education is really has a lot of problems. It's really a mess. And she's a very bright young lady, and she's a senior right now at UPenn. And so driving her down to Philadelphia, we started discussing all the problems in the higher education space, and what her friends were going through. And so we knew that there was a problem. So we came back and researched uh, uh, for a few months, and decided that this is an industry that needs um, a lot of help, if not a lot of disruption. There are some untenable things that are happening in education, which need to be which need to be there's something's going to give somewhere, right? And
Yeah.
so solutions need to be founded, and so we said, why not? So at this point in time, we've got three platforms that we've launched. We've individually raised money for them. Obviously, we funded them ourselves initially, and then raised outside capital. And these are technology platforms that actually do try and disrupt or find solutions to current problems that are in the edtech space at this point in time.
Yeah. So I'm curious then. You mentioned that you and your daughter were kind of talking about a lot of the problems that were in the education space. I agree with you, but I'm curious to know what you think some of the biggest problems in the education space are.
So if you, I mean, I'm going to quote an article which is, I think, in the January 2020 issue of the Higher Ed magazine. They did a
Okay.
survey for the trustees of all the public universities and also the trustees of private universities. So more than 92% of both, I mean, I think it was 88% of one and 92% of the other. The top five problems were all financially related. That is there value in
Hmm.
the degree we are getting? Where is tuition headed, which
Yeah.
is untenable? Where is the student debt crisis? Are students taking on too much, too many loans that they won't be able to basically pay back over a set course of time, etc.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
and all the way down to the financial sustainability of the educational institute itself.
Hmm.
Now, they're very, very wealthy institutions, right? So they'll do just fine, and obviously there's great demand, but there are others that actually we're starting to see that there are universities that there are physical universities that are closing down, and have lost a lot of their I guess students, and
Hmm.
all these other problems relating to. So, where does the problem lie? Where does this financial problem lie? If you look at all the category of expenses and how they've grown in the last 25 years, education is 4x of where the CPI index is. So the
Hmm.
CPI
Oh
index in the
wow.
last 25 years has gone to 55% from where it was 20 years ago or 25 years ago. I have a chart here. And
Yeah.
if you look at education, it's increased 210%. So 4x of where of regular, and it's the cost of textbooks and it's tuition, and it's not stopping. I mean, right now it costs. I'm paying $80,000 for my daughter at this point in time, and I think in a few years it's going to cross $100,000 per student per year in a decent private university. And the thing is that just if we just take a step back, I mean, sincerely, how many people can really afford it? How much financial aid is given? So what we first did was, I mean, how much financial aid is provided? How many federal loans? Like there are students who basically, yes, there are complete federal loans available, but again, the problem is that income has to be below a certain level,
Hmm.
etc. And there are all these rules. So folks who are really like, if it's two hardworking parents And if those two hardworking parents basically collectively, let's say, make like a buck 25 a year, 125,000 a year, there's no way they can put
Yeah.
four children or three children through school. So
Right.
what's the bonanza is in all these student loan companies, right? If you see the growth of
Mhm.
student loans, it's greater than the
Yeah.
auto market, the auto loans as well as credit card loans in the country. So and there's no sign of stopping. We're adding probably 120 billion to 150 billion a year of student loans. And the problem again being is that um, the main problem is this cost of getting educated and and folks not having the means. And then the other cost, the other part is that the problem just keeps getting compounded with the with all that's going on. When I graduated college, I also did an MBA. I didn't have any help from anyone, but had a small fellowship, had some work study, and allowed me to graduate debt free. Right.
Mm.
When your tuition
Yeah.
is 60,000 a year, I mean, what's a work study program going to dent? It's not going to do anything to help a student out. So that is the crux of the problem, and
Yeah.
then get
I think you're
compounded by
right.
many more things.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, so you start off with this like extremely high cost of education that gets compounded with. Right now, we're kind of in this weird phase, I think, in society where you know you have some people on one side who are like, you don't need a college degree to succeed and get wealthy and get far in life, and then you have this other side of society that's like, um, yes, but every job posting you see on LinkedIn or Indeed or on your local job posting requires a degree. Like, so I'm in the sales field, like I'm a sales guy. And it's amazing to me when I look at some of these job postings for, you know, an entry level sales job, maybe like a sales development representative, or maybe an entry level account executive position. Like either one of those, they're requiring bachelor's degrees. And then you look at like, what are they like? Okay, so do you want a bachelor's degree in sales or something like that? And it's like, no, we don't care what it is, but a requirement is any bachelor's degree period. And that just blows my mind because I'm of the belief that you don't need a degree to learn how to sell. Like you just need to go sell something. You know what I'm saying? You need to find a mentor in the field and you need to see if it's for you, and then you'll be successful. Like that's how I started. But so you have these entry
No,
level positions that just like don't need it, like they require a degree, but you don't need a degree for it. And so it's a real battle there between employers and employees.
so there's a lot going on in that space as well. I think lots of companies, lots of people, they realize that is going on. Um, the first platform we build, it's called Scholarful. Scholarful.com is what it is. And it's an aggregator, it's a scholarship aggregator that lets students find scholarships. And so they can one click apply to hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of scholarships. Now, there isn't enough money for all the kids out there to be able to get, but at least we're trying to make it convenient for kids to at least be able to apply for a lot of money, right? And even if it's
Yeah.
private money. And then the next thing we try and ensure is that money doesn't leak. So if it's 10,000 for the kid, then it goes 10,000 goes to the kid's tuition, and it doesn't basically leak away in expenses and consultant fees and all those things. So that's the platform. So as part of this application process for this platform, we make students fill in. I mean, the students have to fill in like a personal essay and why they're looking for money. And Dalton, some of these essays, they're gut wrenching. These are kids.
Mhm.
Sometimes they're coming from, like, let's say, even if they're coming from underprivileged or middle class backgrounds, but they are conscientious, they are astute, they understand that debt is a big problem and they really don't want to take on $200,000 worth of debt. They're working three
Mhm.
jobs, they're tutoring kids, etc. They are trying the best they can. And sometimes they write these essays when we read them. It's definitely brought a tear to almost everybody's eyes in on my whole team, you know. And
Wow.
sometimes we'll be able to read these essays and know, okay, what is a kid really going through, right? And so this is across the country. I mean, really across the country, we find uh, lots and lots of students are hurting and lots of parents are hurting. And the students are talking about their siblings. There were my brother. He has 250,000 of debt. And yes, he had a great time in college, but now he's making 45,000 a year somewhere
Mhm.
in Tennessee. And so we see all these kinds of
Wow.
essays, and it's really a travesty. I mean, I came to this country to do my master's, and of course, stayed on and got some great opportunities. And basically, the hotbed, I mean, the heart of this country is consumerism, right? And these kids, right? I mean, it's built on America's built on consumerism. And then what I notice is that we have employees who are 30 years old and they're staying with their parents. We have
Yeah.
employees who are not getting married. We have people who we know who are basically not buying a nice car and forget going to a nice restaurant. And this is this is only going to get prevalent. I mean, more so. Today, there are of the 16 million kids who basically are attending college, more than 11 million are taking on student loans. At least that's what our research shows us, and it's a travesty at this point in time
Wow.
and what's going on.
So
So
you said there's 16 million students who are taking student loans, and or excuse me, there's 16 million total students and 11 million are taking out student loans.
yes, yes,
Oh wow.
it
Yeah,
might be
that's
even
insane.
higher. I mean, the latest number that my team told me was 70% of students going to public school and or state schools. I'm sorry, state universities, and 85% of students going to private universities are taking on student loans.
Oh my gosh. That's insane. But
Because
don't
there's
you
a
think
huge
something
gap.
would have
There's
to
a huge
give?
what we also see in these applications is there's a huge gap. First of all, they have to fill out what are their means, right? Their parents' savings, grandparents' savings, their school financial aid from school, etc. So they have these, and then basically on what's required for them to study. So the gap is what they apply for, or on scholarships, etc. So we notice this gap. We notice where the uh, and it's an ever widening gap that they're having
Yeah.
to deal
Yeah,
with.
I
Yeah,
can't imagine that. So, what do you think is driving up the cost of education?
absolutely. Uh,
I know, big question. I'm just curious though,
that's a
because in my
yeah.
head,
I mean, whatever the business planning that I mean, universities to some extent know that students, just like what you said earlier, that bachelors this job requires a bachelor's, and that's it. And
yeah.
obviously, another situation is that it's general consensus that if you have a degree, you're going to advance more in life. You're going to there's going to be uh, betterment. Your life's going to be better than not having a degree. It's consensus, right? It's just a
Mhm.
general consensus. So obviously, parents want their kids to do well. Students themselves have this growing up thing that if I go to a university and I graduate, I'll have better career opportunities. Obviously, that was there. So
Mhm.
what's they're driving up costs of tuition is that universities know that students are going to come no matter what. So they've been steadily increasing costs as they compete and as they become more, I guess, research oriented. Their costs have increased as well, and they basically have been
Mhm.
increasing tuition for the last 25 years at a rate which I said is like four times that of the inflation rate. So that's been going on, and so that is the main reason why tuition is going up. And then also there was some legislation that was passed in 2005 that emboldened the student loan companies to basically offer student loans to students. And so student loans was less than like I think 150 billion or like maybe even less than that at the turn of the century, and now it's 1.7 trillion. So obviously, some legislation was passed, and I can send you details about it. That
Yeah.
student loans never go away, the debt never goes away, no matter what happens, and it's definitely
Yeah.
emboldened all of those as well. So it was a perfect combination of universities continuing to hike up their tuition. No, sometimes at like 8% a year, sometimes 7% a year. And on top of that, knowing that these students need these degrees to advance in life, and then also on the other side, supposedly there was ready money available in terms of loans that were available to fill the gaps. And um, uh, and again, the point again being is, how long can this continue till something drastic that needs to happen, and how does it break? Because it's not sustainable over the long term. It's just not going to be sustainable. There are
No, there's
many
no
many
way.
parents. There are many parents and students. So what you just said is happening at this point in time. I'm sure there's a debate in every household before a large student loan is taken up, that do I need to go for this degree, or should I do something else that probably maybe doesn't need a degree but also doesn't let me take on, that I won't be taking on a lot of debt.
Yeah, I mean that's what me and my wife were going through when I was trying to figure out if I was going to do my MBA, and we put it off for a while because, yeah, the cost was just insane, and at the time, like, there was no real direct result of getting an MBA, but eventually, like, I found a really affordable program, and there's a few other things, so it ended up being justifiable, and I paid off my bachelor's degree, so I don't, like, my MBA debt will be the only student debt I have, and it's very little. But for me, it's this kind of like, and maybe you can give me your 2 cents on this. Maybe I'm like, maybe this is just very tip of the iceberg. But for me, it's like when you have these federally backed student loans, you have guaranteed money. These kids can't afford it, but they have to have it, and the government will pay you, and there's no, you know what I mean, like, it doesn't feel like these colleges, and these private or public, are running on any kind of like actual capitalist model of like risk reward, because I don't believe that if a college knew that they weren't going to get paid back for that loan, or excuse me, for that degree, like if they offered it and they knew there was no way, that even if they got the highest paying job in that field, that student wouldn't be able to pay that loan back, you have a real problem. Like, I don't think they would, either it wouldn't cost as much, or they wouldn't offer those kind of degrees, like, so I'm feeling like we kind of run into this crony capitalism model that we have in these colleges right now.
Oh yeah. So the loans are being offered. I mean, more and more so. They are federally guaranteed, but more and more so, they've got private lenders now. And
Mm,
also the other part is that a lot of these kids don't know what they're really signing up, right? When they just sign, when
yeah.
you're like 17, or you just turn 18, and you're signing on the dotted line, and they've pretty much told you that you're not going to pay anything till you're in college. So so again, it's a combination of all of this that's happening. Yeah.
Wow.
Again, like I said, where does it break? How does it break? I don't know, but it's to us, it's untenable. But in the meanwhile, a lot of students are getting hurt. A lot of students are
Mhm.
getting hurt. They are graduating with hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt, and and when they really get into the job market, I mean, they really are not going to be making that. So on average, or at least what the stats tell you today, is on average it's
Mhm.
taking them about 22 to 24 years to pay back that debt.
Oh
And they're
my
probably, like,
god.
if they're taking, like, it's like a mortgage, right? And if you're taking a hundred
Yeah,
thousand in debt, they're probably paying about 200 back with interest and other things.
that's
But
crazy.
yes, but to me, the issue is that the very foundation on what America's built on, that's basically going to get hurt, or is getting hurt, by these students, because certain behaviors are getting inborn into them, or basically manifesting in different ways.
Yeah.
And I see it. I mean, we all see it. We all see folks who are not getting married at the right age. We are, living with their parents, not buying nice things, having a phobia about what we are built on, what this country is built on, which is consumerism.
Yeah, it's bananas. Well, and I think when you talk about, because I was just having a conversation, with a friend of mine about this the other day, where it's so debilitating. You do everything right, you know what I mean? You graduate high school, you even if you do as much as you can to pay for school, then you go to college, and you get married, and you do all the right things, it feels like, and it's still not enough. Like, you still, and you look at some other things that are happening, like if people do get married, or not, they're not having as many children. That's going to be a big issue in the next little bit. Is like people are afraid to have kids, people are afraid to start businesses, people are afraid to do all of these things because, like, it's just because of the situation that we're in. And then on top of all of that, you have people pushing for, like, what I would like to see and what I would think that is a big disruptor in the education space. And maybe you can tell me about all three of the companies that you have going on, but one of the things that I see is like some kind of credentialism. Like, we have to be able to, I don't know, just there has to be more like emphasis on skills and what you actually can do rather than like where you went to school. And I feel like we're in 2022 almost, and there is that kind of feeling that you are your own credentials, but we're just not there yet.
Yes, so that's another one of our platforms, which is uh, the purpose. If the purpose of going to university is to get a good job, then there are lots and lots of these large companies, large and small companies, who have specific skill sets that they need. Just like what you said, for a salesperson, for a good salesperson, you need certain types of training, and you don't necessarily need a 4-year college degree. So
Yeah.
we are basically the second platform is called Speki. The website is speki.org, speki.org. And basically, it's a platform for students, which is about 17, 18-year-olds. If you're not going to go to university, you can go and get into it. It's more of a vocational and a technical training program. And we have one of the world's foremost education developers who's actually developing content with us in conjunction with certain large corporations, and which is very tailored to them. And then the other part is that we were able to partner up with the Department of Veterans. And the veterans also face, there are 250,000 veterans who are coming out of the army every year. Not only the army, from all four service areas, and they are often underemployed, or they are often unemployed, right? So
Mhm.
it's basically also a, a ability to give them vocational and proper training so that they can get into proper employment into these companies that have basically become charter members of this particular organization. So yes, I mean, we are building something which has a practical need, and is liked by all the parties concerned. And I mean, university is going to stay. There's no issue there. We're not trying to build an alternative to university, but what we are definitely trying to give people a choice is that if they do not wish to go to university because of costs, then at least they have the ability to go and find a career without
Mhm.
having and have a clear path towards a career, and be able to compare, if I do this, if I become a digital marketer, these are my
Mhm.
career paths. This is what I can afford to make. This is where I probably will land up, versus being a healthcare aid worker, or versus being like somebody who jabs you the COVID test. In terms of all of those, I mean, all of those don't really require a college degree, right? So,
Right. Right. Yeah.
but giving people a clear understanding and proper training, which is actually very tightly coupled with employers, that is definitely something that we are attempting.
Yeah. And what's, that's what I'm kind of talking about, I guess, because we've fallen into a trap on both sides. Like, either you start like this alternative education where you credential, young America, or you kind of back away from credentials altogether. I was reading in the Wall Street Journal where, like, they were arguing, one of their op-eds was arguing, um, that we've become too credentialed, right? So, like, to get a journalism degree, to get a journalism job, you got to have a journalism degree. And do you really need a 4-year $100,000 degree to be a journalist, or can you start? Because I live in Utah, but I'm from Iowa, and one of the big things where I'm from in the Midwest is, it's very industrial. There's a lot of manufacturing. There's a lot of farming there, and a lot of those positions start out as apprenticeships, right? So, like maybe a lineman or a welder, you start out as an apprentice, you get a little trade that maybe a couple grand, that maybe your company even pays for. You go be an apprentice for less money than you would be as a full welder, or a fully credentialed welder, and you just take time, and you go in there, right? I feel like, with this consumerism trap that we're in, we also are in this, like, I want it now phase, right? So if I can spend 4 years learning about welding, and get a degree, versus having to work for 4 years, um, there might be something there. And I'm wondering if, like, yeah, are we too credentialed? Do we just need to go back to maybe like some apprenticeships? I don't know. It's a weird space. And that's kind of like, I'm like really drawn to that education disruption space.
Right, right. But like I said, Dalton, I mean, our parents, our grandparents, us, we all uh, are steeped into this tradition of wanting a degree, and a degree is the way for advancement and all of that. So I don't think that's going to change that soon. I think the mindset of the country is there, but I think there are enough people who are willing to challenge that, especially in lieu of the debt that they're going to take on, or the means they have. So, as in everything in life, you got to start somewhere, and so I do see um, I do see a little programs like what we are attempting to do come into light, which will serve a certain portion of people, of students, and if they do notice, hey, listen, I can get into a six-figure job in what, 5 years or 10 years of working hard, etc. I mean, there are tons and tons of jobs in. I can tell you where they are in real estate. I mean, to be a broker, to be an assessor, to be an appraiser, to be a title person, you don't need a degree, right? Then
Right. Right.
in healthcare, as I just mentioned a couple of examples, there are probably 100 more. Then in digital marketing, right? And
Yeah.
lots and lots of folks want to be entrepreneurs now. And to be an
Yeah.
entrepreneur, basically or to own a franchise, etc. So we're seeing all of those happen, and as I think technology changes everything, is changing everything, is disrupting everything. A couple of other things that are coming to notice. I mean, something that was, I mean, before COVID, we never imagined that that an online degree would. We thought, I mean, like the mindset was that an online degree was always like um, uh, second fiddle to in-person training and in-person college and all of that. But sometimes
Mhm.
something that was not even considered possible before COVID, it's now the preferable way. So mindsets
Yeah.
have changed, things have changed, and opportunities will come up because of that. Problems will get disrupted because of that, because of how things have changed. So, like I said, we have to start somewhere, and I do see innovation happening in this front.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned two of the companies. You mentioned Scholarful and Speki. What's your other education company?
The third education company is the one that I'm doing with Ben, and Ben is basically a key part of it. And it's basically is to tokenize. It's in the crypto world. It's to bring opportunities from the crypto world into the edtech space, and basically benefit more and more students because of that. And so that's basically a platform called Scholar, and that's what we are attempting to do to use the benefits of blockchain and use the benefits of crypto to be able to benefit even more and more students.
So how do you benefit more and more students with the technology of blockchain? Because I think I had this idea burning in the back of my head that there's some use of the blockchain technology to disrupt the education space, but I couldn't put my finger on it. So tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, there's a whole myriad of use cases that actually can be done, and I think they're going to be done over, like, there's a 4 or 5 year roadmap on what needs to be built and how it needs to be. But initially, what we are doing is, as we do want to help more and more students, we do want to be able to go out and tokenize some of the scholarships that we are providing, and tokenize some of the and bring some transparency into endowments and into how scholarship monies are dispersed. I mean, the blockchain is a perfect way to bring transparency to what is usually a very opaque industry, which is again called philanthropy. If you give 100 or $100,000 to certain places, and I don't want to take any names. I don't want to put anybody down. But again, I
Sure.
just think that technology should bring transparency and solutions where 100% of what is paid out is purposed for the right purposes. And there's no better place to record it than in a distributable ledger, right? Using blockchain, whether it's private or public or whatever is cost effective, definitely. So we are attempting to provide solutions around that at Scholar, and so but also take advantage of certain other things like the DeFi yields are amazing, and so those can actually bring a higher return and generate more scholarships for money is already earmarked to go to students. So that's one of the first use cases that we are attacking, and then down the
Mhm.
road. There are lots and lots of things that can happen. There are marketplaces that can be built, edtech marketplaces, payment mechanisms, like giving students the ability to win or earn um, enough to be able to pay for their education. And if crypto
Mhm.
can even, or if this industry can facilitate even a small portion of it, it'll definitely help students out. So, like I said, we've got plenty of use cases, we've got plenty of traction right now, and it's a 4 or 5 year project.
Wow. Well, that's fantastic. I think that's a lot of really great things. Like I said, it's one thing that I'm really passionate about because so many people, education is so important. Like that's the ticket out of poverty, right? Like and the American dream, like that, becoming educated, networking, like all of these things. But I feel like a lot of things have crept in to kind of impede a lot of people to get an education, to further their education in a traditional sense. Although with the internet now, like, you can learn pretty much anything and get enough to get going, right? Like digital marketing, for example, like for sure you don't need a degree for that. You need to know a few things, but I have friends who teach people, coding, for example. Teach you how to code, build a little portfolio so that you can go start getting jobs, because you may not need a degree, but you do need some kind of proof that you know what you're doing. But there's all kinds of ways to do that, and I think that that's where I would like to see the focus is like proof that you know what you're doing, not necessarily that like where you learned it. Um, so digital marketing, there's a lot of ways you can prove that. Sales, there's a lot of ways you can prove that. I don't know, a lot of other ways you can do that. I would also like to see, I've talked to a lot of people about this, but I would also like to see the whole resume and like job application process get disrupted as well. I think there's a lot of things going on there that I'm just like, it's bonkers, it's bananas.
No, absolutely. I think you bring up a very good point. Is that uh, let's take digital marketing, right?
Hmm.
Um, if today, if somebody is an expert on Google Analytics,
Hmm.
right, or is an expert on Facebook Manager, Ad Manager, or is a expert at a lot of these technologies at this point in time, I mean, you are sure shot getting a nice offer out there for you because
Yeah.
there's great demand for these skills, right? But at the end of the day, if you look at the world is moving so fast, but if you look at what universities and what like some of the traditional places of education, what they're teaching, I mean, they're still a little bit further behind in terms of bringing people up to speed on the latest skill sets that are actually prevalent in the marketplace, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
there is a there's a language called Solidity. Solidity is in which anything to do with Ethereum, like you code in there, and there's a great shortage of good Solidity programmers. So it's more word of mouth, it's more community oriented, and it's more self oriented that people are taking it on their own to be able to learn this and then finding opportunities. So
Hmm.
the world's moving at lightning speed, and I think that there's an opportunity there to be able to bring all these prevalent subjects. I mean, what may be and also some of these may have a longer shelf life, and some of them may just be like okay, it was great for 1 year, great opportunities, and then it was replaced by something else. So the world's moving at the technology is moving at lightning speed, and I think it's only going to get faster and faster. And
Mm,
I'm not sure that the traditional ways keep up. So
yeah,
that's another uh, that's another place where opportunity exists for folks who want to be able
yeah.
to take advantage of it. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I really appreciate that. I'm really excited to follow your journey and Ben's journey, and I'm definitely going to keep a close eye on that. But and I really appreciate your time. I know that it's late over on the East Coast, so I'll give you your night back. But I appreciate it. Before we go, though, could you recap where everybody can get involved with some of these tech companies that you have going on? If they want to learn more about those, where can they go to find those?
So our scholarship aggregator is called scholarful.com, and our education company is called speki.org, speki.org. So these are two places where folks can actually come in and connect with us. And
Okay,
if they have anything to add to us, surely we'll welcome them. And I'm sure that that could be a great starting point.
perfect. Well, again, thank you so much for being here, and I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.